All right, let's break down a huge idea, one that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries: the quest for certainty.
I mean, how can we really be sure that anything is true? This is one of those massive, ancient questions in philosophy, right? It's all about trying to find some solid ground for what we know in a world that, let's be honest, often feels shaky and full of doubt.
Well, back in the 19th century, a Spanish philosopher named Jaime Balmes came along with a really elegant, practical answer. Instead of getting tangled up in these super complex, abstract theories, Balmes just looked at the tools we already use every single day to figure out what's true. So let's dive in and see how he did it.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at this big problem of doubt. Then, we'll walk through Balmes' three key criteria for truth. That's consciousness, evidence, and common sense. And we'll see how he pieces them all together into this really cool system for knowing.
All right, so when you talk about certainty in philosophy, you almost have to start with radical doubt. And the poster child for that is, of course, René Descartes. You know the story. He basically decided to doubt everything he possibly could, tearing it all down until he was left with just one single, unshakable truth. I think, therefore I am.
But here's the thing. Is that really enough to build a whole understanding of the world on? Balmes didn't think so. He saw a major problem. I mean, if you start with just that one tiny little speck of certainty, how in the world do you get back to trusting your senses or believing the world around you is real? Balmes basically said, look, that's just too small of a foundation. We need more. And this is where Balmes comes in with his big idea. He suggested that we don't just have one lonely guide to the truth. Nope, he said we have three really reliable guides or criteria, and they all work together to give us a solid grip on reality.
And what I love about this quote from him is how straightforward it is. See, the really powerful thing about Balmes' approach is that he's not trying to invent some crazy, complicated new system from scratch. He's just identifying the pillars of knowledge that, let's face it, we all use intuitively every single day. He's just giving a name to how we naturally know things.
So you can think of these three criteria as a team, right? Each one is in charge of a different area of truth. You've got consciousness, which handles your inner world. Then there's evidence, which takes care of the rational, logical world. And finally, common sense, which connects you to the outer world, to reality itself.
Okay, let's break down that first criterion, consciousness. This is our most fundamental, most personal source of certainty. It's that immediate, direct awareness of what's going on inside our own heads. Balmes called it the sentido intimo, which translates to something like intimate sense.
Just think about it for a second. Can you really doubt that you're thinking something right now or feeling something? It's impossible. Why? Well, because the very act of doubting is a thought that you are consciously aware of. So, boom, that's our rock-solid starting point for any subjective truth.
All right, so once we've established that inner certainty, Balmes takes us to the next step. We're moving from our personal, subjective world to truths that are objective and crystal clear to anyone who looks at them with reason. And this he calls the criterion of evidence.
This is the world of things like logic and math. You just know that 2 + 2 = 4. You know that something can't be a circle and a square at the exact same time. These aren't just gut feelings, right? These are truths that our minds, our reason, can grasp with total, absolute clarity.
And now we get to what might be Balmes' most unique and, you could argue, most important criterion. This is the real game changer. It's the one that builds the bridge between our own minds and the massive world outside of us.
So here's the million-dollar question. Can you use pure logic to prove that the chair you're sitting on is real or that the world outside your window actually exists? Honestly, no. But Balmes says we have this powerful, natural, intellectual instinct, what we just call common sense, that is this irresistible urge to believe our senses. It's a fundamental trust we have even without a logical proof.
So, okay, we've got these three things: consciousness, evidence, and common sense. But how do they all work together? Well, Balmes came up with this brilliant analogy to explain how it all fits together like a puzzle.
So inside this massive archive, you find all sorts of different records. Some of them are perfect, crystal clear, easy to read. But others, they're ancient. They're a bit worn, maybe even damaged. But guess what? The family still trusts them. They still use them to manage their entire estate. And this is a perfect picture of Balmes' system. Those perfectly clear legal titles,
That's evidence. They're your objective, rational truths. That personal family diary? That's consciousness. It's an undeniable subjective truth for the person who lived it. And those old beat-up maps? That is common sense. Look, they might not be perfect, they might not be a satellite GPS, but they are trusted and they work. They're good enough to get you around the estate. See? We use different kinds of certainty for different kinds of truths, and the whole thing just works.
So what's the big takeaway here? Why does this matter? Well, Balmes' philosophy is this really empowering defense of how we naturally know things. He's basically telling us, hey, it's okay. It's okay to trust your reason. It's okay to value your inner feelings. And it's absolutely okay to rely on your common sense gut feeling that the world is real. He really brings philosophy back down to earth, out of the clouds, and into our everyday lives.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. In your own day-to-day life, which of these 3 criteria do you lean on the most? When you're making a decision, are you trusting your own inner voice, your consciousness? Are you looking for the cold, hard data, the evidence? Or are you just going with that powerful, common-sense instinct about the world? It's a great question, and according to Balmes, to have real, balanced certainty, you really need all 3.